Yep. The dogs are barking. What are they barking for? What are they barking for? They're barking because Daddy's home. Hi, YouTube friends. Well, yesterday my daughter came in the kitchen and I showed her what I had gotten her in the refrigerator, which was a quart of eggnog. And as soon as she saw it, she squealed with delight and said, "Oh, it's got to be autumn now," that kind of thing. And then right away she asked me to make pumpkin bread. I don't remember where I got this recipe. Let me see. What does it say? I think I got this recipe from a very dear friend that I knew years ago. I think her husband made this bread. I'm not sure. It's supposed to be pumpkin cranberry bread. I leave the cranberries out for my children because they don't want cranberries in there. I love the cranberries, and I might make one with a little bit of cranberries for me. Anyway, I started it, and then I remembered, oh, I need to record this. So, because I'm planning to share it with you. So, let me tell you what I've done so far. Here's my little pot. Okay, it's a small saucepan, not a huge one. And this is strange. I'm warming a can of pumpkin. This is like last year's. It's been on the shelf. With the spices that go in this. And so far I've put in a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. And then the nutmeg we don't have any ground nutmeg. We just have, this is so delightful. This is an old tin. I think it's a tin that was supposed to have Spanish something. Oh, Spanish saffron. Spanish saffron. Anyway, we don't keep saffron in it, but we keep nutmeg, which are these little nuts. And then this is mace, and mace I'm pretty sure it's just the outside shell of the nutmeg nut. And so we keep them in there together. And Adam likes to use that. The mace for stuff. I don't know. Anyway, so I've been grating a little bit of nutmeg. It's amazing how much nutmeg you really have to grate in order to get a teaspoon. So I've put in, let me check. Yeah, I put in a teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm going to put in some more nutmeg. I don't want to be shy with the spices because the spices are what this is all about. It's important to remember that pumpkin is a squash. And pumpkin has about as much flavor as any squash, which is like none. Pumpkin is really a carrier of flavor, so that's why all pumpkin dishes have tons of sugar or brown sugar or just spices. So it's all about the spices. Okay, if that's not enough nutmeg, it ought to be. All right, so we'll put this back on the back of the stove where we keep it. We keep a lot of stuff on the back of our stove. Okay, and a half a teaspoon of ground ginger. I'm not going to be quite exact with this. That looks like about a half teaspoon. Ginger is a little hot, so you don't ever want to go overboard with that. And then it says a half teaspoon of ground cloves. I'm going to take this off. Cloves are also quite strong. Okay, now the other spice that I add, because I do love it so, is allspice, which is not all spices combined. It is its own specific spice. I'll put a little bit of that in there. I love the flavor of allspice. Okay, so what we're doing, for whatever reason, I don't understand recipes, is we are warming this pumpkin and spices up on the stove. Kind of meld all those flavors together, and then we will let them cool down before we add eggs to them and things like that we wouldn't want to cook in the heat of the pumpkin. Now I'll put this recipe in the description below. Okay, and it's not hard. I make it every year, make a bunch of them every year, and I always put them in these little loaf pans. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I have 5 of these little loaf pans, and I do like them so much. Here's one. Isn't that cute? They just make these little mini loaves. You can buy the metallic ones, you know, the metal ones, made out of aluminum foil or whatever, but I really like these better. There's another. I love this one. See that fall scene? This one's cute too. This one's cute. Yeah, they're all, I guess they know, whoever makes these, that we use them in the fall because they always put fall things on them. I'm going to wash them all out because they've been sitting on the back porch since last fall or maybe Christmas. But this is really what I use them for. And I've gotten all of these at thrift stores over the years, I'm sure. I don't think I ever bought one new. So I'll get those washed up and then we'll continue. I'm going to finish this recipe after lunch. I've got my lunch warming here on the back of the stove too. A few little leftovers. So we'll be back in a minute. Okay, so I'm back. I went in and had lunch and watched a teeny bit of television and laid down on the couch and didn't take a nap. And it gave this pumpkin and spices time to cool down. So this feels nice. I could add my eggs straight in here. Now, this recipe is a great demonstration of the fact that I'm a very lazy cook. And I am actually going to mix up everything in this pot. But it cuts down on the dishes and I'm in favor of that. So let's go ahead and break our eggs in there. My hens have been disappointingly non-productive recently. My youngest hen is laying pretty much every day, but the others, I mean, I have hunted the orchard to see if they are laying elsewhere, and they're not that I can find. They're just not laying at all, and it's not like it's that cold yet. They don't have weather as an excuse. None of them are molting now. Nobody's broody. So I don't know why they think they have a right to just sit there and eat food all day long, squawk at me, and then not give me any eggs. Okay, so I've got those eggs nicely combined. The next thing I'm going to put in is the oil. It's a half, that was 2 eggs, and then a half cup of oil. Now this recipe will make 1 bundt pan, 2 regular loaf pans, or I think about 5 of those little loaves. I've also done like a loaf pan before, a regular loaf, and maybe 2 of the others. Anyway, you can combine how you want to do it. So there's my oil, half a cup of oil. So you put in those 2 wet ingredients, and then now, of course, you're supposed to blend the dry ingredients before you incorporate them. Do I do that? No. That would require not just more effort, but also dirtying another bowl, and I just don't do that. I figure if I mix it well enough, then I'll be fine, and it's always turned out fine. Okay, so the next thing we've got is 2 cups of sugar. 2 cups of sugar? That's a lot of sugar. I think I must. It's a lot of oil too. It's quite oily. Half a cup of oil. Oh, I did not read carefully. Darn. That a half a cup of oil is supposed to be half butter and half coconut oil. I remember that, doing that now. Well, we'll make it this way and see if it turns out okay. I don't want to put 2 cups of sugar in there. I think that that's an outrageous amount of sugar. So I'm gonna, I think, put 1.5 cups. Most things are too sweet anyway. Would you not agree? I don't like it to taste like sugar. I want it to taste like the spices. I really wish I hadn't put that much oil in. I'm tempted to go drain some of that off and add butter instead. I remember now what I used to do. I think I haven't made these in a couple years. I used to warm the pumpkin and spices, and then I would put the butter and coconut oil in there, and they would melt into the pumpkin, and it would get them melted and it would cool it down. And since they were melted, they would combine nicely. Okay, I'm gonna go pour off a little bit of that oil. I just don't like it. I can't believe I did that. All right, so 1 cup of sugar. This recipe just doesn't feel very familiar to me. I can tell I haven't made it in a while. I really had it down to a bit of an art form at one point. Okay, and another 1/2 cup of sugar. have to remind myself, this is not cooking for my diabetic self. This is cooking something yummy for others. So I'm going to go ahead and put some sugar in there. Okay. Okay, we also need a teaspoon of soda and a half teaspoon of salt. And I'm going to sprinkle this nice and evenly and then stir it quite well and make sure that I don't have any soda that's clumped up. Interesting to have something that requires soda instead of baking powder. All right. One thing I always do is go back over the ingredient list and make sure I've got everything. Don't have flour yet, of course. But I have spices, soda, salt, eggs, sugar, oil, and pumpkin. Okay. Now let's stir this up really, really well before we get any flour in there. And the temperature you want to set it at is 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. Now this calls for 2.5 cups of flour. Just all-purpose flour. Okay, now I did fit it all in there with room to spare. I know that seems shockingly impossible. It's a beautiful warm brown color. This is going to be so yummy. You do want to see how I've still got little clumps of flour in there. You want to stir, stir, stir until you know that you have it all incorporated. And then I'm going to put this into those little pans that I'm going to put some butter in first to make sure they're greased, and then we will bake for 50 minutes. Keep an eye on it though, because it would be less for these small loaves, and of course it'd be more for the bundt cake, and you'd probably want to test the bundt cake if you use that to make sure. There's a little more flour in there. Okie dokie, this is going to be fun. Now, because I failed to put butter in the recipe, I am going to use real butter to line these pans, okay? I really want that flavor in there. I could just kick myself for not remembering or just not reading carefully how I like to do this recipe, but it'll be okay. And it'll probably still taste just fine. I've got my 5 loaf pans nice and clean. Okay. Now I do want to do this somewhat evenly. I don't want any of them to be overfilled because they tend to poof up too much and crack on the top. And then I'll save one to put cranberries in for myself, and I'm just going to poke those cranberries into the loaf separately. I'm going to get some frozen cranberries. I keep frozen cranberries in the freezer all year long. That was my temperature gauge. Okay, now let's add a little bit more to some of these that apparently are underfilled. This is just a beautiful, it really is a batter. If it were just a little thinner, it would be more like a cake batter. Let's smooth these around. That one has a little bit of a mess on the side. Okay, into the oven they go. Well, the pumpkin bread is finished, and I'm enjoying a nice end of mine, my little loaf with lots of butter on it, and my cranberry in mine, and a glass of milk. So go make some pumpkin bread for the season and enjoy. Thanks. See you next time. Please leave a comment below if you'd like to. I'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this channel, I'd love it if you would subscribe so I can see you here again. If you liked this particular video, then please click the thumbs up button, which tells me that you really like this particular content. There's also a little bell down there that will help you get notifications every time a new video comes out on my channel. Thank you.